Hey, guess what? We're rolling, baby. Yeah. Truck moving. Now we just gotta hope we don't get stuck back here. Hell, welcome to riding shotgun with Tupper. And after 2 weeks of being grounded with no truck for reasons, battery mainly, and too cold to go out there and try to wrestle around with it. I mean, it was brutal. We're back in service, and that's good, because I was getting tired of doing it in the office, and I heard from some of you that didn't like that as much either. So anyhow, now we just got to hope we don't get stuck, because the ground is really weird. It was cold enough long enough so that it froze, but now we've had rain, and it's sort of, I think it's frozen deep and a little muddy on top, and I'm hoping that we don't get stuck down here, or else you're going to hear some bad words while we record this. But wow, did you watch the Alabama-Georgia game for the national championship last night? That was something else, you know. You invest 3.5 hours or whatever of your evening in a game like that, and you would like to be rewarded with a good game. And man, if you watched it all and stuck around, you were very much rewarded. That was just a phenomenal second half. I mean, you know, Alabama did nothing in the first half, and Jalen Hurts couldn't do anything and couldn't throw the ball. They really didn't get anything running. They really needed a spark. And I tell you what, it takes a head coach with a lot of confidence and moxie to do what Nick Saban did at halftime, which is to pull his starter, who was 25-2 as a starter, and put in a true freshman who had never started, done just some mop-up duty in the second half. Tua, I'm not even going to go for his last name, but the left-handed Hawaiian, and man, that kid was sensational. That whole game was kind of a reminder that there are freshmen, and we who follow Illinois football know all about that, because of the number that Illinois played this year. And then there are freshmen. There are those 5-star kids that are just cut from a different bolt of cloth, and are ready for that moment. And that kid was, I mean, that kid was sensational. The only bad thing about that whole thing is, how does that kid ever top that? I mean, there's his national debut, and, you know, we always assume the arrow's going up. How does it go up? He threw for 166 yards and 3 touchdowns after Saban put him in to start the second half. And that final, you know, they get the ball, they're down 23-20 after Georgia kicks the field goal, and on first down, the kid gets sacked for, was it 16-yard loss, I believe? You can't get sacked on that play. You can't get sacked back that far. And Saban went nuts on the sideline. And, you know, I mean, there's a freshman who gets kind of caught in a tough situation and can't get out of it. And I don't know what he would have done then, but he needed to figure out something. He didn't. Now they're essentially backed up out of field goal range. Yeah, he could have made a couple plays to get him back in, maybe kick a field goal, maybe tie it, maybe go to a second overtime. But instead, he throws that deep ball down the left side. And go back and look at that throw. That's 50 yards in the air, and that ball was thrown hard. That safety had no chance to get over to the ball whatsoever, and it was perfectly thrown. Perfectly thrown. Nobody could catch up to it, and that kid made the catch, and you look at it and go, well, that's just a catch you got to make. Yeah, you do, but he was a true freshman too. And I've seen that ball be dropped. Man, that was just a gorgeous, gorgeous play. And I'm not an Alabama fan, not a Georgia fan, not an SEC fan, but hats off to everybody for that game. That was high entertainment in that on that stage. And, you know, whatever you think of Nick Saban, and I remember him covering him when he was at Michigan State, and then he won a national title at LSU, and now he's won, what, 5 at Alabama. He showed me a lot last night. That's just a hugely courageous gamble, and he stuck with it even when the kid had a couple of bumps, and paid off in a championship. And you know, if you are from Alabama and you are a hardcore Alabama fan, you know, I don't know, I know a lot of those older fans will never be able to get off of Bear Bryant as the greatest coach of all time, and I'm not suggesting they should, but I am suggesting that that Nick Saban put himself in that same realm with that performance last night, his 5th championship, 6th overall. Bear had 6 at Alabama. Bear had Joe Willie Namath. Saban last night had a left-hander from Hawaii and nobody knew, except those within the program. So that was just wonderful entertainment, a great way to end the college football season, and hats off to him. I mean, that was just wonderful, and that's the best sports dynasty we have in the United States, is it not? There's no baseball team that compares to 5 championships in 9 years, and then in the championship game last year. There's no baseball team that compares to that. That gets swapped around. The Patriots haven't done that in 9 years, no. There's no basketball team that's done it. The Bulls, once upon a time, were. That's long gone. LeBron can claim a personal legacy, dynasty, if you want to, for the times he's made it into the national championship game. Made it into the NBA championship game. But some of that with the Heat, and some of that with the Cavs, and Golden State's not there, not yet. If they can ever get there, there's just nobody there. The Blackhawks won 3 titles in 6 years, maybe, between 2010 and 2015. But that's something. That is something, and hats off to them. Illinois basketball. I was up in Ann Arbor on Saturday. And Illinois played a much better first half, didn't get behind, didn't put themselves in a hole. But Michigan's a good team, and you knew Michigan would respond, and they did, and took care of Illinois, won by 10. Illinois is not shooting the ball well, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, they have a couple shooters who are, I know people grumbling on Twitter saying Michael Finke can't shoot, Aaron Jordan can't shoot. No, both those guys can shoot, but they can't get shots. And so they've got to be open. They've got to have time, space, and balance. And they're not moving the ball well enough to get either one of them that. And so after a few games in which people didn't know who Aaron Jordan was, didn't cover him tightly, now he is being covered more tightly. And unless you can get that ball flying around and reverse it and go inside and outside and kick it around the way Michigan did at times in the second half, to create open shots for their threes, Illinois is going to be in some trouble doing that. So, we'll see what adjustments they can make. They play Iowa on Thursday night. The Big Ten's down, clearly. It looked like Michigan State and Purdue, and then everybody else. Now Ohio State has beaten Michigan State handily. I'd say maybe 4 teams from the Big Ten get in. Probably Michigan State, Purdue, Michigan, maybe Ohio State is that other team. Some teams are certainly down. Indiana's down, Iowa's down, Wisconsin's way down. Minnesota is on their way down. They would have been a tournament team, but now they lose Reggie Lynch to suspension, and they lose Amir Coffey, who looked very good, scored 16 against Illinois. They lose him for weeks with a shoulder injury, so they're headed on down. Northwestern, I don't know what's going on with them. They lose by 15 at home to Nebraska, and then lose by 15 on the road. Maryland with 2 injuries, headed in the wrong direction because of that. And then Nebraska is a team that looks better than I thought they would look. Every time I've seen them, maybe I've seen them at just the opportune times to have this opinion, but they look better, more athletic, longer, deeper than I thought that they would be. And when I've seen them, Penn State hasn't looked too bad either. So I don't know, how this will all turn out, but it's interesting, that's for sure. And Illinois with Iowa. I mean, the feeling I have, honestly, is that Illinois' season probably veered off the path with 3 games. with the Northwestern game, which they lost in overtime, with the Maryland game, which they lost in overtime, and with the New Mexico State game in Chicago. If you have those 3 wins, 2 of them are in the league, all 3 of them count on your resume, your confidence is different, your development arc is different, and the whole thing feels different. And now it certainly feels like you're paddling upstream. I think the really kind of bright development over those 2 road games here at the start of the year is the development of Gregory Eboigbedim. Ebo really, just by doing a couple simple things, screening and then listening to Brad Underwood and Orlando Antigua when he bolts to the basket. And if teams don't follow him to the basket, he's learned that the dunk is a very high percentage shot and that he can make that shot. And 5 for 5 against Michigan, and he gives them a little bit of a rim protection presence that they haven't had, able to block shots there. It was interesting talking to him in Ann Arbor. He's a really good kid. I'd talked to him before, but maybe he was just in a sort of a joyous mood. You know, he went to Jesuit High School in Detroit, and that's not far from Ann Arbor. He had family, he had friends there at the game, and he knew he had contributed in the game, and so he was really happy. And he can make Illinois better by continuing to do that, particularly at a time when LeRon Black has been sick, really sick in Michigan, in Minnesota, where they got him to a doctor, and in Michigan too, just not himself. And you know, we'll see. Hopefully he's turned a corner this week and is feeling back to par on Thursday. But so we'll see what happens Thursday night, and see how they do against Iowa. And you know, the thing is, after those maybe those 4 teams that I mentioned as tournament teams, everyone else is similar. They can all play good on a given night. They just don't all play good every night, and they've got flaws. And so when Illinois plays Iowa at home, Illinois should win that game, but there's no guarantee they will. When Illinois plays, go right down the list of those teams: Wisconsin, Northwestern, you know, any of those teams, Rutgers, any of those teams. No gimmies until they can turn the corner and show that they can stay turned on it. But they haven't been there yet. So, okay, glad we got the truck moving. Thanks for riding along. And kind of a gloomy day, no doubt about that. But at least we're up and moving. Appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Good night.